Christmas morning should have been different. I woke up in our bed at 6:30, same as every other day for the past 8 years, expecting to find Seren already downstairs, making coffee and arranging the presents under our tree. Instead, I found her sitting at the kitchen table with her laptop open, typing furiously while wearing the silk robe I'd bought her last year. "Morning, babe," I said, reaching for the coffee pot. "Merry Christmas." She didn't look up. "Morning, Keaton." That's when my phone buzzed. Bank alert. I glanced at the screen and felt my stomach drop through the floor. Account balance, 000. Transaction, $4,750 to Riverside Motors. Authorization time, 11:47 p.m., December 24th. "Seren?" I held up my phone. "What's this charge?" She finally looked up, and there was something in her expression I'd never seen before. Cold satisfaction, maybe, like she'd been waiting for this moment. "Oh, that." She closed the laptop. "I bought Derek a car for Christmas. He really needed reliable transportation." Derek, her ex-boyfriend from college. The guy who'd been texting her increasingly often over the past few months, supposedly about some business opportunity that never quite materialized into anything concrete. "You bought your ex a car, with our money, without telling me." "It's not our money, Keaton. It's my money. I make twice what you do at the gym." She stood up and walked to the counter, pouring herself coffee like we were discussing the weather. "Besides, Derek's been struggling since his divorce. I wanted to help." I stared at her. 8 years of marriage, and I felt like I was looking at a stranger. $47,000, Seren. That's our emergency fund. That's the money we've been saving for the house down payment." "We'll save more." She shrugged. "You're always talking about picking up more training clients. Here's your motivation." The casual cruelty in her voice hit me harder than any punch I'd ever taken in the boxing ring. I managed to keep my voice level, though every instinct screamed at me to start yelling. "Where's my Christmas present?" Seren walked over to the tree and picked up an envelope from underneath it. She handed it to me with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. I opened it. Empty. "Real men don't ask for gifts, Keaton. They provide them." I stood there holding the empty envelope, trying to process what was happening. My wife had just drained our savings account to buy her ex-boyfriend a car, handed me an empty envelope for Christmas, and told me that wanting a present made me less of a man. "I need some air," I said. "Don't be dramatic." She was already opening her laptop again. I have work to catch up on anyway. I walked outside into the December cold, wearing nothing but pajama pants and a t-shirt. Our neighborhood in Millbrook looked picture perfect in the morning snow. White picket fences, decorated houses, the kind of suburban dream Seren and I had worked toward for years, except now it felt like a stage set for a play I didn't remember auditioning for. My phone buzzed again. Another bank alert, this one showing the transaction details. Riverside Motors. Vehicle purchased, 2024 BMW X5. Pickup contact, Derek Hall. Derek Hall. The same Derek who'd been calling Seren at odd hours, supposedly about investing in some tech startup. The same Derek who'd shown up at her law firm's summer party and spent the entire evening hovering around my wife while I made small talk with her colleagues. I pulled up the bank app and scrolled through our account history. The $47,000 wasn't the only unusual transaction. Over the past 3 months, there had been smaller charges I hadn't noticed. Expensive dinners at restaurants, Seren claimed, were client meetings. Hotel charges in the city when she said she was working late. Jewelry purchases that never seemed to make it home to her. Standing there in the snow, I felt something shift inside me. Not anger, exactly. Something colder and more focused. I'd spent 8 years being the supportive husband, the guy who picked up extra training sessions to help pay for her law school loans, who attended every firm party and smiled while her colleagues made jokes about marrying above my social class. Real men don't ask for gifts. Maybe she was right. Maybe it was time to stop asking and start taking action. I went back inside. Seren was still at the kitchen table, now on a video call with someone I couldn't see. "I have to run some errands," I told her. "Whatever." She didn't look up from her screen. I got dressed and drove to Riverside Motors. The dealership was closed for Christmas, but I could see the lot from the street. There it was, a pristine white BMW X5 with temporary plates, parked right in front of the showroom with a big red bow on the hood. I sat in my truck for a few minutes, thinking. Then I called the dealership's after-hours number. "This is Keaton Marin," I said when someone picked up. "My wife Seren purchased a vehicle yesterday using our joint account. I need to speak with your finance manager about the transaction." "Sir, we're closed for the holiday. This is about a $47,000 purchase made without proper authorization. I can either discuss this with your manager now, or I can discuss it with my attorney tomorrow morning." 20 minutes later, I was sitting across from Jerry Kowalski, the dealership's finance manager, in his cramped office behind the showroom. Here's the situation, Jerry said, sliding a folder across his desk. Your wife provided authorization via text message from your joint account. She had all the necessary information, account numbers, routing numbers, security questions. Everything was legitimate. I opened the folder and read through the purchase agreement. There it was in black and white. Derek Hall as the primary contact for vehicle pickup, Seren's signature on all the financing documents, and a text message exchange between her and the dealership authorizing the transaction. When is Mr. Hall picking up the vehicle? I asked. Tomorrow morning, 10 a.m. I nodded and closed the folder. I'd like a copy of all these documents. Sir, I'm not sure I can... My name is on the account that funded this purchase. I have a legal right to documentation of how my money was spent. Jerry made copies of everything and handed them to me in a manila envelope. I thanked him and drove home, my mind racing. Seren was in the living room when I got back, wrapping presents for her parents. She looked up when I walked in. Feel better? She asked. Much better. I sat down across from her. I stopped by Riverside Motors. Her hands froze on the wrapping paper. Why would you do that? Because my wife spent our life savings on a car for another man, and I wanted to understand the transaction. I pulled out the manila envelope. Interesting reading. Seren set down the scissors she'd been holding. Keaton, you're overreacting. Derek needed help, and I was in a position to provide it. That's what decent people do. Decent people discuss major financial decisions with their spouses. I don't need your permission to be generous. You're right. I stood up. You don't need my permission for anything, just like I don't need yours. Something in my tone must have gotten through to her, because her expression changed. The casual dismissiveness was replaced by something sharper, more calculating. What's that supposed to mean? It means I'm going to the gym, though we'll talk more when I get back. I left her sitting there surrounded by half-wrapped presents and drove to Marty's boxing club on the south side of town. The gym was technically closed for Christmas, but Marty lived in the apartment upstairs and always kept the doors open for guys who needed somewhere to work off their frustrations. Merry Christmas, Keaton, Marty called out when I walked in. He was sitting behind the front desk, reading a paperback novel and drinking coffee from a mug that said, World's Okayest Coach. Not feeling very merry today, Marty. He looked up from his book. Marty was 65 years old, built like a fire hydrant, and had the kind of street wisdom that came from managing a boxing gym in a Rust Belt town for 30 years. He could read people's moods better than most therapists. Woman trouble? Wife trouble? I started wrapping my hands. She drained our savings account to buy her ex-boyfriend a car. Marty whistled low. That's cold, even for a lawyer. I spent the next hour beating the heavy bag until my shoulders ached and my hands were numb inside the gloves. Marty watched from his chair, occasionally offering technical corrections, but mostly just letting me work through my anger. You know what your problem is? He said when I finally stopped to catch my breath. Enlighten me. You're thinking like a victim instead of thinking like a fighter. I unwrapped my hands and sat down on the bench next to him. What's the difference? Victims ask, why me? Fighters ask, what now? Marty closed his book and leaned forward. Your wife just showed you exactly who she is. Question is, what are you going to do about it? I don't know yet. Well, you better figure it out fast. Because she's not done? This car thing? That's just the opening round. I drove home as the sun was setting, Marty's words echoing in my head. Seren was in the kitchen making dinner when I walked in, acting like nothing had happened. How was the gym? She asked without looking up from the stove. Educational. I sat down at the kitchen table. We need to talk. Can it wait until after dinner? I made your favorite. Beef stew. She was right. It was my favorite. But somehow the gesture felt calculated, like she was trying to manage me the same way she managed difficult clients at her law firm. No, it can't wait. I pulled out my phone and showed her the bank app. I want you to explain to me how spending $47,000 on another man's car is being generous, and spending $0 on your husband's Christmas present is teaching me to be a real man. Seren turned off the stove and faced me. The mask of domestic normalcy slipped away, and I saw the lawyer underneath. Fine. You want the truth? Derek is starting a business. He needed reliable transportation to meet with investors. I saw an opportunity to help someone I care about achieve his goals. Someone you care about. Yes. We have history, Keaton. Good history. Just because we didn't work out romantically doesn't mean I stopped caring about his success. And your husband? Do you care about his success? She was quiet for a long moment. Then, when was the last time you had a goal bigger than training the next amateur fighter? When was the last time you wanted something that required real ambition? The question hit harder than I'd expected, because she wasn't entirely wrong. I'd been comfortable in my small world, the gym, our house, our routine. I'd never pushed for more because what we had seemed like enough. Maybe you're right, I said. Maybe I haven't been ambitious enough. Relief flickered across her face. Keaton, I didn't mean... No, you're absolutely right. I think it's time I started thinking bigger. I went upstairs and sat on our bed, staring at the manila envelope from the dealership. Inside were copies of every document related to Derek's new car. Purchase agreement, financing terms, insurance information, and most importantly, the text message thread between Seren and the dealership. The messages told a story that was different from the one she'd given me downstairs. This wasn't a spur-of-the-moment act of generosity. The first message was dated 3 weeks ago, 3 weeks of planning to spend our money on another man, but there was something else in the documents that caught my attention. The financing wasn't just tied to our savings account. There was a personal loan involved, a loan that required a co-signer with significant assets. I pulled out my laptop and logged into our credit monitoring service. There it was, a $30,000 personal loan opened 6 months ago, co-signed by Richard and Margaret Whitmore, Seren's parents. I sat back and stared at the screen. This wasn't just about Derek's car. This was about a much larger financial picture that Seren had been hiding from me. A loan her parents had co-signed, probably thinking it was for something responsible like home improvements or investment property. Instead, their daughter had used their financial backing to fund her ex-boyfriend's lifestyle. I spent the next 2 hours going through every financial document I could access. Bank statements, credit card bills, loan agreements. The pattern was clear. Seren had been systematically moving money around for months, setting up this moment when she could make the car purchase without my knowledge. She'd planned this. All of it. When she came upstairs at 11, I was still sitting on the bed with my laptop open. "Are you coming to bed?" she asked. "In a minute." I closed the laptop. "I have a question for you." "Okay." "Do your parents know what you used their co-signature for?" The color drained from her face. "What are you talking about?" "The personal loan, Seren. The one they co-signed 6 months ago. The one that helped fund Derek's Christmas present." She sat down on the edge of the bed, suddenly looking very small. "How did you—" "I'm not as financially naive as you think I am." I stood up. "So I'll ask again. Do your parents know that their financial backing helped you buy your ex-boyfriend a BMW?" "It's not that simple." "It seems pretty simple to me. You lied to them about what the money was for, and you lied to me about where it came from." Seren was quiet for a long time. Then, "What do you want me to say, Keaton?" "I want you to tell me the truth. All of it." She looked up at me, and for a moment I saw something that might have been regret. But it passed quickly, replaced by the defensive posture I'd seen her use in court. "The truth is that Derek and I never really ended things. We stayed in touch over the years. When his marriage fell apart last year, we started talking more. He has this amazing business opportunity, but he needed capital to get started. So you decided to provide it. I decided to invest in someone with actual potential." The casual cruelty was back in her voice. The implication was clear. Derek had potential, and I didn't. "I see." I picked up my phone. "Well, since we're being honest, I should probably be honest with your parents about how their co-signature was used." "Keaton, don't." For the first time since this conversation started, she sounded genuinely worried. "They don't need to know the details." "Why not? If Derek's business opportunity is so amazing, I'm sure they'd be thrilled to know their investors. Please, can we work this out between us?" I looked at my wife, really looked at her, and realized that somewhere along the way she'd stopped seeing me as a partner and started seeing me as an obstacle. The woman I'd married 8 years ago wouldn't have drained our savings for another man. She wouldn't have handed me an empty envelope on Christmas morning. She wouldn't have looked me in the eye and told me that wanting basic consideration made me less of a man. "No," I said. "I don't think we can." I didn't sleep much that night. Seren tossed and turned next to me, probably running through damage control scenarios in her head. I lay there staring at the ceiling, thinking about what Marty had said. Victims ask, "Why me?" Fighters ask, "What now? What now?" At 6 a.m., I got up and made coffee. Seren was still asleep, or pretending to be. I sat at the kitchen table with my laptop and started making a list of everything I knew. Seren had been planning this for months. She'd used her parents' co-signature under false pretenses. Derek was picking up the car today at 10 a.m. She'd been in regular contact with him throughout their business discussions. She saw me as an obstacle to her real ambitions. I opened a new browser window and searched for Richard Whitmore's contact information. Seren's father was a retired insurance executive who'd built a comfortable nest egg through careful planning and conservative investments. He was also the kind of man who took financial responsibility very seriously. I found his office number, he still did consulting work, and wrote it down. At 7:30, Seren came downstairs wearing her running clothes. "Going for a run," she announced. "Have a good one." She paused at the door. "About last night? We'll talk when you get back." After she left, I called Richard Whitmore. "Keaton." His voice was cheerful. "Merry Christmas. How are you and Seren enjoying the holiday?" "That's actually why I'm calling, Richard. I need to discuss something important with you, about the personal loan you and Margaret co-signed for Seren." There was a pause. "What about it?" "I'm looking at the documentation here, and I want to make sure I understand how the money was used." Another pause, longer this time. "Keaton, Seren told us that loan was for home improvements. Kitchen renovation, I believe." "I see. When was the last time you were at our house, Richard?" "About 3 weeks ago for Seren's birthday dinner. Why?" "Did you notice any kitchen renovations?" The silence stretched out long enough that I could hear him breathing. "Richard, I'm going to email you some documents. I think you should see them before we continue this conversation." I spent the next 20 minutes scanning and emailing everything: the car purchase agreement, the loan documentation, the text messages between Seren and the dealership. Then I called him back. "Jesus Christ," he said when he picked up. "She bought Derek Hall a car?" "A $47,000 BMW, using your co-signature and our savings account." "That son of a—" He caught himself. "I'm sorry, Keaton. I had no idea." "I know you didn't. The question is, what do we do about it?" "We call in the loan, immediately. If Seren misrepresented the purpose of the funds, she's in breach of the agreement." "Can you do that?" "I co-signed for $30,000 based on false information." "Damn right I can do that." His voice was getting harder. "Margaret and I worked our entire lives to build financial security. We're not going to watch our daughter throw it away on some deadbeat ex-boyfriend." "What do you need from me?" "Forward me everything you have. Every document, every transaction record, every piece of evidence that shows how this money was actually used. I'll have my attorney review it and start the process." After I hung up, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months. Hope. Not hope that Seren and I could work things out. That ship had sailed the moment she handed me an empty envelope. But hope that there might be consequences for what she'd done. Seren came back from her run at 9:15, flushed and breathing hard. "Feel better?" I asked. "Much." She grabbed a water bottle from the refrigerator. "Listen, about last night. I think we both said things we didn't mean." "Did we?" "I know you're upset about the money. I should have discussed it with you first." "You should have discussed it with your parents, too." She froze with the water bottle halfway to her lips. "What's that supposed to mean?" "I called your father this morning." The water bottle slipped from her hand and hit the kitchen floor, sending water splashing across the tiles. "You what?" "I called Richard and told him how his co-signature was actually used. He was very interested to learn that the kitchen renovation he thought he was funding turned out to be a BMW for your ex-boyfriend." Seren stared at me like I just announced I was from Mars. "Keaton, you had no right—" "I had every right. My name is on the savings account that was drained. My credit is tied to yours. When you make financial decisions that affect both of us, I have a right to understand what's happening." "You're trying to turn my parents against me." "I'm trying to make sure they understand what they're financially responsible for." I stood up. "Derek picks up his car in 45 minutes. I think I'll drive over and watch." "Don't you dare." "Why not? It should be a happy moment. Man gets his dream car, generous ex-girlfriend makes it possible, everyone wins." Seren's face was pale now. "If you go to that dealership, if you make a scene—" "I'm not going to make a scene. I'm just going to observe." "Keaton, please, let's just sit down and talk about this like adults. We tried that last night. You told me that real men don't ask for gifts and that Derek has potential while I don't. I think we've said everything we need to say." I grabbed my keys and headed for the door. "If you go there, we're done," she called after me. I turned back to look at her. "Seren, we've been done since the moment you decided another man was worth our life savings and I wasn't worth a Christmas card." The drive to Riverside Motors took 15 minutes. I parked across the street where I could see the showroom and waited. At exactly 10 a.m., a black Audi pulled into the lot. Derek Hall got out, and even from a distance, I could see his excitement. Derek was everything I wasn't. Tall, polished, wearing clothes that probably cost more than I made in a month. He walked into the dealership like he owned the place. 20 minutes later, he walked out with Jerry Kowalski and headed straight for the white BMW. Jerry handed him the keys, they shook hands, and Derek got behind the wheel of his new car. I started my truck and followed him. Derek drove through downtown Millbrook like he was leading a parade, taking the scenic route past the lake and through the historic district. He stopped at Starbucks, left the car parked prominently in front where everyone could see it, and went inside. I parked next to him and got out. "Nice car," I said when he came back out with his coffee. Derek looked up, startled. It took him a moment to recognize me. "Keaton." "Hi." He glanced nervously at his new BMW. "What are you doing here?" "Admiring your Christmas present. That's a beautiful car." "Thanks." He was clearly uncomfortable. "Listen, about the car? What about it?" "Seren said you were upset. I want you to know this is strictly business. She's investing in my company." "Your company?" "I'm starting a consulting firm. High-end business development. Seren believes in the concept. She believes in it to the tune of $47,000. Derek shifted his weight from one foot to the other. "It's an investment, not a gift. She'll see returns." "What kind of returns?" "Well, that depends on how quickly we can scale the operation." I nodded thoughtfully. "And how exactly does a BMW help you scale a consulting operation?" "Image is everything in business. Clients need to see success before they'll trust you with their projects." "Makes sense." I pulled out my phone. "Mind if I get a picture? I'd love to show my friends at the gym what $47,000 looks like." "I'd rather you didn't." "Why not? If this is a legitimate business investment, there's nothing to hide, right?" Derek looked around the parking lot like he was hoping for rescue. "Look, Keaton, I understand you're upset, but this is between Seren and me. It doesn't involve you." "It involved me when she used our joint savings account to fund it." "That's between you and your wife." "You're right." I put my phone away. "It is between me and my wife. Enjoy the car, Derek." I got back in my truck and drove home. Seren was waiting for me in the living room, pacing back and forth like a caged animal. "Did you talk to him?" she demanded. "Briefly. Nice guy. Very excited about his new consulting business." "What did you say?" "I congratulated him on his Christmas present and wished him luck with his business venture." Seren studied my face, trying to read my expression. "That's it?" "That's it." I sat down on the couch. "Although I do have some questions about the business plan." "What questions?" "Well, Derek mentioned that you're expecting returns on your investment. I'm curious about the timeline for that." Seren sat down across from me. "It's a long-term investment, Keaton. These things take time." "How much time?" "I don't know. Maybe a year, maybe 2. "And what happens if the business fails?" "It won't fail." "But if it does?" Seren was quiet for a moment. "Then we'll deal with that when it happens." "We?" "I'll deal with it." "With what money?" "You just spent our savings." "I'll figure it out." I nodded. "Speaking of figuring things out, your father called while I was gone." The color drained from her face again. "What did he say?" "He's calling in the loan, immediately." "He can't do that." "Actually, he can. Misrepresenting the purpose of borrowed funds is breach of contract. His attorney is reviewing the documentation this afternoon." Seren stood up abruptly. "I need to call him." "Good luck with that." She went upstairs, and I could hear her voice through the ceiling, getting louder and more desperate as the conversation went on. After about 20 minutes, she came back downstairs. Her eyes were red, and her hands were shaking. "They want the money back by the end of the week," she said. "All of it?" "All of it. Plus penalties and fees, $68,000. "Where are you going to get $68,000? "I don't know." She sat down heavily on the couch. "Maybe Derek can return the car." "Maybe he can." "Will you call him? Ask him to bring it back?" I looked at my wife, sitting there asking me to clean up the mess she'd made with another man, and felt something cold settle in my chest. "No," I said. "I won't. Keaton, please. I know I messed up, but you didn't mess up, Seren. You made a choice. You chose Derek over me, his future over ours, his happiness over mine. Now you want me to fix it for you." "I'll fix it myself then." "How?" She didn't have an answer for that. That evening, I went back to Marty's gym. He was training a teenage kid on the speed bag, calling out combinations and corrections. "How'd it go today?" he asked when the kid took a break. "Her parents are calling in the loan. She owes them $68,000 by Friday." "And she doesn't have it." "Not even close," Marty nodded. "So what's your next move?" "I'm not sure I have one. The money's gone, the marriage is over. Maybe it's time to just walk away." "You could do that." Marty leaned against the wall. "Or you could finish what you started." "What do you mean?" You exposed the loan situation to her parents. That was smart, but you're only halfway done. Halfway to what? To making sure she understands the consequences of her choices. Marty picked up a towel and wiped his hands. Right now, she's still thinking like this is a problem she can solve. She's probably calling Derek, trying to figure out how to return the car or restructure the loan or convince her parents to give her more time. So she needs to understand that some problems don't have solutions. Some choices have permanent consequences. I thought about that on the drive home. Serene's car wasn't in the driveway, which meant she was probably out somewhere trying to salvage the situation. I went inside and sat down at the kitchen table with my laptop. If Marty was right, if Seren was still thinking this was a problem she could solve, then maybe it was time to show her exactly how unsolvable it really was. I opened a new browser window and started researching divorce attorneys. The divorce attorney's office smelled like leather and disappointment. Janet Morrison had been practicing family law in Millbrook for 25 years, and her reputation was built on getting results for clients who'd been betrayed by their spouses. So let me make sure I understand, she said, reviewing the documents I'd brought her. Your wife drained your joint savings account to purchase a vehicle for her ex-boyfriend, using funds partially obtained through a loan that her parents co-signed under false pretenses. That's correct. And she gave you an empty envelope for Christmas while spending $47,000 on another man? Also correct. Janet leaned back in her chair. In 30 years of practice, I've seen a lot of creative ways to destroy a marriage. This one's impressive. What are my options? Well, the good news is that your wife has done most of the work for us. Financial infidelity is grounds for divorce in New York, and the documentation you've provided clearly establishes a pattern of deception and misappropriation of marital assets. She opened a folder and pulled out a stack of forms. I can file a petition for legal separation today, along with a motion to freeze all remaining joint accounts and credit lines. Given the circumstances, I'm confident we can get an emergency hearing within the week. What about the money that's already gone? That's more complicated. The car is titled to Derek Hall, not your wife, so we can't directly recover it. But we can pursue reimbursement for your wife's share of the marital assets she converted to her personal use. Meaning? Meaning she'll owe you $23,500, plus interest and legal fees. I signed the papers and wrote Janet a retainer check. Walking out of her office, I felt something I hadn't experienced since Christmas morning. Control. Seren was waiting for me when I got home, sitting at the kitchen table with her phone and a legal pad covered in notes. "Where were you?" she asked. "Running errands." I hung up my coat. "Any luck with Derek?" Her expression darkened. "He's not returning my calls." "Interesting." I drove to his apartment. He wasn't there, and his neighbors said he saw him loading boxes into the BMW this morning. Boxes? Like he was moving somewhere. I sat down across from her. Maybe he's just relocating for business purposes. Maybe. She didn't sound convinced. "Keaton, I need to ask you something." "Okay." "Would you consider taking out a loan against the house, just temporarily, until I can figure out how to repay my parents?" "No." "It would only be for a few months?" "No." "You're not even willing to consider it?" I looked at my wife, really looked at her, and marveled at her ability to keep asking for help while offering nothing in return. "Seren, 3 days ago you told me that real men don't ask for gifts. Today you're asking me to mortgage our house to bail you out of a situation you created with another man. Do you see the irony in that?" "This is different." "How?" "Because we're married. We're supposed to help each other." "Where was that philosophy when you were planning Derek's Christmas surprise?" She was quiet for a moment. Then, "I know I hurt you. I know I made mistakes. But we can fix this if we work together." "We?" "Yes, we. I'm willing to do whatever it takes to make this right." "Are you willing to call Derek and demand that he return the car?" I tried. He's not answering. "Are you willing to report the car as purchased with stolen funds?" "It wasn't stolen." "Are you willing to admit to your parents that you lied to them about the purpose of the loan?" "I already did that." "Are you willing to admit that you've been having an affair with Derek?" The question hung in the air like smoke. Serene's face went through several expressions before settling on defensive anger. "I haven't been having an affair." "Really?" "Because I've been going through our phone bills, and you've exchanged over 300 text messages with Derek in the past month. You've had 17 phone calls lasting more than 30 minutes each. You've met him for dinner 6 times that I know of, and probably more that I don't. That doesn't mean we're having an affair." "What does it mean?" "It means we're friends. It means I care about his success. It means you've been lying to me for months about the nature of your relationship with another man." Seren stood up abruptly. I don't have to listen to this. You're right, you don't. I pulled out the legal documents Janet had prepared. You can listen to this instead. She took the papers and read through them, her face growing paler with each page. You filed for separation? This morning. Without talking to me? We've been talking for 3 days. You've made it clear that Derek's needs are more important than mine, his future is more important than ours, and his happiness is worth our life savings. I don't think there's anything left to discuss. Keaton, please, don't do this. I'm not doing anything. You did this when you chose him over me. I didn't choose him over you. Then call him right now. Tell him to bring the car back. Seren stared at me for a long moment. Then she picked up her phone and dialed Derek's number. It went straight to voicemail. Derek, it's Seren. I need you to call me back immediately. We need to discuss returning the car. She hung up and looked at me expectantly. Now what? I asked. Now we wait for him to call back. And if he doesn't? He will. But Derek didn't call back that day, or the next day, or the day after that. By Thursday, Seren was calling him every few hours, leaving increasingly desperate messages. She drove to his apartment building twice, but his neighbor confirmed that Derek had moved out. He'll call, she kept saying. He just needs time to think. Friday morning, Richard Whitmore called me directly. Any word from your wife about the loan repayment? He asked. She's been trying to contact Derek about returning the car, but he seems to have disappeared. Disappeared? Moved out of his apartment, not returning calls. She's starting to panic. Richard was quiet for a moment. Keaton, I need to ask you something, and I want you to be honest with me. Okay. Do you think Seren was having an affair with this Derek character? I considered the question. I think she was having an emotional affair at minimum. Whether it was physical, I don't know. But you suspect it was. The evidence suggests a relationship that went beyond friendship. What evidence? I told him about the phone records, the dinner meetings, the hotel charges that never had explanations. Richard listened without interrupting. I see, he said when I finished. Well, that changes things. How so? Margaret and I have been discussing this situation. If Seren was using our money to fund an affair, then this isn't just financial irresponsibility, it's fraud. What does that mean? It means we're not just calling in the loan, we're filing a police report. That afternoon, Richard and Margaret Whitmore drove to the Millbrook Police Department and filed a formal complaint alleging that their daughter had obtained money under false pretenses and used it for purposes other than those specified in the loan agreement. I wasn't there when they served Seren with the paperwork, but I could hear her reaction from the gym where I was training a client. My phone buzzed with text after text. They called the police on me. My own parents called the police. I need you to come home. Please, Keaton. This is serious. Where are you? Answer your phone. I finished the training session and drove home. Seren was sitting on the living room floor, surrounded by legal documents and tissues. She looked up when I walked in, and I saw something I'd never seen before. Genuine fear. They're saying I committed fraud, she said. Did you? I didn't mean to. I thought Derek would pay them back. When? I don't know. Eventually. With what money? From his business. What business, Seren? He doesn't have a business. He had an idea and a BMW, and now he has just the BMW. You don't know that. I sat down on the couch. I hired a private investigator yesterday. Her face went white. You what? I hired someone to look into Derek's background, his business history, his financial situation, his recent activities. Why would you do that? Because I wanted to know who my wife gave our life savings to. I pulled out the investigator's report and handed it to her. She read through it with growing horror. Derek Hall has no business registration, no corporate filings, no business license applications. He was fired from his last job for embezzling client funds. He's facing a civil lawsuit from his ex-wife for failure to pay child support. And as of yesterday, he was seen boarding a flight to Miami with a woman who is definitely not you. Seren stared at the report like it was written in a foreign language. He's gone, I continued. The car, the money, Derek, all gone. And you're sitting here facing fraud charges because you trusted a con man more than you trusted your husband. I didn't know, she whispered. You didn't want to know. You were so busy being excited about your secret relationship that you never bothered to ask the basic questions. What am I going to do? I don't know, but I know what I'm going to do. I stood up and walked to the closet where I'd packed 2 suitcases. You're leaving? The separation papers give me the right to separate residence. I'm moving into an apartment downtown. Keaton, please, don't leave me alone with this. You're not alone. You have Derek. I picked up my suitcases. Oh, wait, no, you don't. He took your money and ran. I'll fix this. I'll get the money back somehow. How? I'll sell something. I'll take out another loan. You'll what? You don't have anything to sell. Your credit is ruined. Your parents won't trust you with lunch money, let alone $68,000. I walked toward the door, then stopped and turned back. You know what the really sad part is? If you'd just talked to me about Derek's situation, if you'd been honest about wanting to help him, we could have worked something out. Maybe not $47,000, but something. Instead, you chose to lie, sneak around, and betray every principle our marriage was built on. I was trying to help someone I cared about. No, you were trying to have your cake and eat it too. You wanted the stability of being married to me and the excitement of playing house with Derek. Well, congratulations. Now you have neither. I left her sitting there and drove to my new apartment. It was a small one-bedroom place above a coffee shop, nothing fancy, but it was mine. For the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe. My phone rang as I was unpacking. Marty. Heard through the grapevine that you moved out, he said. News travels fast in this town. How you holding up? Better than expected. There's something liberating about finally admitting that your marriage is over. What's next? I wait for the legal process to play out. Seren will either find a way to pay back her parents, or she'll face the consequences of the fraud charges. And Derek? Derek's in the wind, probably spending my money on piña coladas and his new girlfriend. Marty was quiet for a moment. You know, there's something to be said for a clean ending. No ambiguity, no false hope, no wondering what might have been. Yeah, she made her choice, and now she gets to live with it. You sound different, Keaton, stronger. I feel different. For the first time in years, I'm not trying to be what someone else wants me to be. I'm just being myself. And how's that working out? Ask me in 6 months. But I already knew the answer. For the first time since Christmas morning, I felt like the protagonist of my own life instead of a supporting character in someone else's story. The coffee shop below my apartment made excellent espresso, which was good because I'd been getting up at 5 a.m. every day for the past 2 weeks. Not because I had to, but because I wanted to. For the first time in years, I was excited about my days. I'd picked up 3 new training clients, started teaching a boxing class for teenagers at the community center, and begun working on a business plan for my own gym. Seren had been right about one thing. I hadn't been ambitious enough, but she'd been wrong about the reason. It wasn't lack of drive, it was lack of clarity about what I actually wanted. Turns out, what I wanted was pretty simple: to build something of my own, to help people get stronger, and to never again let someone else's opinion of my worth determine how I saw myself. My phone buzzed with a text from Janet Morrison. Court hearing scheduled for Friday 2 p.m. Bring all financial records. The divorce was proceeding smoothly. Seren had initially tried to contest the separation, but her attorney had apparently explained the reality of her situation. When you drain your spouse's savings account for another man and then get charged with fraud by your own parents, you don't have a lot of legal leverage. I was reviewing my notes for the hearing when someone knocked on my apartment door. I opened it to find Seren standing in the hallway, looking like she hadn't slept in days. Hi, she said. Hi. Can I come in? I considered saying no, but curiosity won out. Sure. She walked into my small living room and looked around. It's nice. Small, but nice. It works for me. Keaton, I need to talk to you about something important. Okay. She sat down on my couch, and I noticed her hands were shaking slightly. I found Derek. That got my attention. Where? Miami. He's living in a condo on South Beach with a woman named Crystal. She's 23 and works at a nightclub. How did you find him? I hired my own private investigator. It cost me $3,000 I didn't have, but I had to know. And I called him. I sat down across from her. What did he say? He said the car was a gift, not a loan. He said I gave it to him freely, which means he doesn't owe me anything. Technically, he's right. I know. She was quiet for a moment. He also said that if I kept bothering him, he'd file a restraining order. So that's it? He keeps the car and the money, and you're stuck with the consequences? That's it. She looked up at me, and I saw something in her eyes I'd never seen before. Complete defeat. I lost everything, Keaton. The money, my relationship with my parents, my job. You lost your job? The law firm doesn't appreciate associates who get charged with fraud. They put me on administrative leave pending the outcome of the criminal case. I felt a flicker of something that might have been sympathy, but it passed quickly. I'm sorry to hear that. Are you? I'm sorry that you're suffering. I'm not sorry that your actions have consequences. Seren nodded slowly. I deserve that. Yes, you do. I came here to ask you something. What? I want you to testify on my behalf at the fraud hearing. I stared at her. You want me to what? Tell the court that I'm not a criminal, that I made a mistake, but I'm not a bad person. Seren, you drained our savings account to buy another man a car. You lied to your parents about the purpose of a loan. You handed me an empty envelope for Christmas and told me that real men don't ask for gifts. What exactly am I supposed to tell the court? That I was confused, that I was going through something difficult and made poor choices. Were you having an affair with Derek? She was quiet for a long time. Then, yes. How long? 6 months. 6 months. I felt surprisingly calm hearing the confirmation. So while I was working extra hours to help pay off your student loans, you were planning a new life with another man. It wasn't like that. What was it like? It was exciting. Derek made me feel like I could be someone different, someone more adventurous, more successful. More successful than what? Than a boxing trainer's wife? And there it was. The truth she'd been dancing around for months. I wasn't enough for her. I'd never been enough for her. I see, I said. Keaton, I know how that sounds. It sounds honest. Finally. I didn't mean to hurt you. Yes, you did. Maybe not consciously, but you absolutely meant to hurt me. Every time you chose Derek over me, every time you lied about where you were going or who you were with, every time you made me feel small for wanting basic consideration, you meant to hurt me. Seren started crying. I'm sorry. I know you are. You're sorry you got caught. You're sorry Derek turned out to be a con man. You're sorry your parents called the police. You're sorry your job is in jeopardy. But are you sorry you betrayed me? Yes. Are you sorry you spent our life savings on another man? Yes. Are you sorry you handed me an empty envelope for Christmas? Yes. Then why did you do it? She wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. Because I thought I deserved better. Better than me. Better than the life we had. I nodded. Well, congratulations. You got something different. Whether it's better remains to be seen. Will you testify for me? No. Please. I'm facing up to 5 years in prison. Then you should have thought about that before you committed fraud. Keaton, I'm begging you. And I'm saying no. You made your choices, Seren. Now you get to live with them. She sat there crying for a few more minutes, then stood up to leave. I hope you're happy, she said. I'm getting there. Derek was right about you. What did Derek say about me? He said you were small. He said you'd never amount to anything because you don't have any real ambition. I stood up and walked to the door. Derek said that about me while he was spending my money to impress his new girlfriend. I think his opinion might be somewhat compromised. You could have been more. You could have wanted more. You're right. I could have wanted a wife who didn't betray me for a con man. I could have wanted a partner who supported my dreams instead of mocking them. I could have wanted someone who thought I was worth a Christmas present. I opened the door. But you know what? I'm done wanting things from you. I'm done trying to be enough for someone who will never think I'm enough. So that's it? 8 years of marriage and you're just walking away? I'm not walking away, Seren. You walked away 6 months ago when you decided Derek was more important than me. I'm just finally accepting reality. She left without another word. I closed the door and sat back down on my couch, feeling oddly peaceful. For months, I'd been carrying around anger and hurt and confusion about what had happened to my marriage. Now I finally understood. Nothing had happened to my marriage. My marriage had been over for months, and I'd been the only one who didn't know it. My phone rang. Marty. How'd the conversation go? He asked. How did you know? Saw her car parked outside the coffee shop. Figured she was upstairs bothering you. She wanted me to testify at her fraud hearing. What did you tell her? I told her no. Good. You don't owe her anything. Marty, can I ask you something? Sure. Do you think I'm small? Unambitious? I think you're a man who knows what he wants and isn't afraid to work for it. I think you're honest, loyal, and decent. And I think your ex-wife is an idiot for not appreciating what she had. Thanks. You know what you should do? What? Come down to the gym. I want to show you something. 20 minutes later, I was standing in Marty's office looking at a business proposal. The building next door is going up for sale, he said. The owner wants to retire, and he's willing to sell to someone who'll keep it as a community business. What kind of business? Whatever kind you want. But I was thinking it would make a hell of a good expansion for the boxing program. I looked at the numbers. The price was reasonable, The location was perfect, and the timing was right. I don't have enough for a down payment, I said. Actually, you do? Marty pulled out another folder. I've been doing some research on your situation. When the divorce is finalized, you'll be entitled to half the value of your house. Plus, there's a settlement coming from your wife's misuse of marital assets. How much? Probably around $40,000. More than enough to get started. I stared at the proposal, feeling something I hadn't felt in years. Genuine excitement about the future. Are you serious about this? I asked. I'm serious. You're one of the best trainers I've ever worked with, and you understand this community. You could build something special here. What would you get out of it? A partner, someone to help carry the load while I start thinking about retirement. I looked around Marty's office, with its faded boxing posters and trophy cases full of amateur championship belts, won by kids from the neighborhood. This place had been my sanctuary during the worst period of my life. The idea of helping to expand it, of building something that would give other people the same sense of purpose and community. It felt right in a way that nothing had felt right for months. Let me think about it, I said. Don't think too long. The owner wants to close by the end of the month. I drove home thinking about possibilities instead of problems for the first time in months. Seren had been right about one thing. I hadn't been ambitious enough. But she'd been wrong about why that mattered. Ambition wasn't about impressing other people or proving your worth to someone who'd already decided you weren't worth much. Ambition was about building something meaningful, something that would last, something that made the world a little bit better. The fraud hearing was scheduled for the following Friday. I wouldn't be there to testify for Seren, but I would be there to watch. Not because I wanted to see her suffer, but because I wanted to see the final chapter of our story play out. After that, I could start writing a new story, one where I was the protagonist instead of the supporting character, one where my worth wasn't determined by someone else's opinion of my potential, one where I was finally enough, exactly as I was. The courthouse in Millbrook was the kind of building that had been impressive in 1953 and had been slowly declining ever since. I sat in the back row of the gallery, watching Seren fidget at the defendant's table while her attorney shuffled through papers that probably wouldn't help her much. Richard and Margaret Whitmore sat in the front row, looking like they'd aged 10 years in the past month. Margaret kept glancing back at Seren with an expression that mixed disappointment with something that might have been grief. The prosecutor was a young woman who looked like she'd graduated law school about 15 minutes ago, but she'd done her homework. She laid out the case methodically. The loan application with false information, the bank records showing how the money was actually used, the text messages between Seren and Derek planning the car purchase. Your Honor, she said, this isn't a case of poor judgment or miscommunication. This is a deliberate pattern of deception designed to obtain money under false pretenses. The defendant lied to her parents about needing funds for home improvements, then used those funds to purchase a luxury vehicle for her boyfriend. Seren's attorney stood up for the defense. He was an older man who specialized in white-collar crime, probably costing Seren more money she didn't have. Your Honor, my client admits she made poor choices. She was going through a difficult period in her marriage, and she acted impulsively. But fraud requires intent to permanently deprive the victims of their money. Ms. Marin fully intended to repay her parents. With what money? The prosecutor asked when she got her rebuttal. The defendant had no business plan, no income projections, no realistic way to generate the funds necessary for repayment. Her boyfriend, the beneficiary of this supposed investment, has since disappeared with the vehicle and has made no effort to repay anyone. The judge was a stern-looking woman in her 60s who'd probably seen every variation of family financial drama over the years. She listened to both sides without much expression, then asked Seren to stand. Ms. Marin, do you have anything you'd like to say before I render my decision? Seren stood up slowly. She looked smaller than I remembered, diminished somehow. Your Honor, I know I made terrible mistakes. I hurt my parents, I hurt my husband, and I hurt myself. I was trying to help someone I cared about, but I went about it in completely the wrong way. Her voice was shaking. I accept full responsibility for what I did, and I'm prepared to face the consequences. The judge nodded. Ms. Marin, the court finds you guilty of obtaining money under false pretenses. However, given that this is your first offense, and given that you've shown genuine remorse, I'm going to sentence you to 2 years probation and 500 hours of community service. You will also pay full restitution to your parents, plus court costs and fees. Thank you, Your Honor. Don't thank me yet. The restitution amount is $73,000, due within 6 months. If you fail to make payment, the probation will be revoked and you'll serve 18 months in county lockup. I watched Seren's face as the reality hit her. $73,000 in 6 months with no job and no prospects. The judge might as well have sentenced her to prison immediately. After the hearing, I waited outside the courthouse. Richard and Margaret Whitmore emerged first, looking exhausted. "Keaton," Richard said when he saw me, "I didn't know you were here. I wanted to see how it ended." "Well, now you know." He looked older than his 68 years. "She'll never come up with that money." "Probably not." "We didn't want this," Margaret said quietly. "We just wanted her to understand that actions have consequences." "I know." "Will you—" Richard hesitated. "Will you keep in touch after everything's finalized?" "I'd like that." They walked away, and a few minutes later Seren came out with her attorney. She saw me standing by the steps and walked over. "Surprised to see you here," she said. "I wanted to witness the end of the story." "This isn't the end. I'm going to find a way to pay them back." "How?" "I don't know yet, but I will." I looked at my soon-to-be ex-wife and felt something I hadn't expected. Pity. Not the kind of pity that makes you want to help, but the kind that makes you grateful you're not trapped in someone else's bad decisions. "Seren, can I give you some advice?" "I'm listening." "Stop trying to fix this. Stop looking for angles and solutions and ways to manipulate the situation. You made choices, and now you're living with the consequences. Accept that." "I can't just give up." "I'm not talking about giving up. I'm talking about accepting reality and figuring out how to move forward from where you actually are, not from where you wish you were." "Easy for you to say. You're not the one facing prison." "You're right. I'm not, because I didn't commit fraud." She was quiet for a moment. "Do you hate me?" "No. I don't hate you, and I don't love you. I'm done having strong feelings about you at all." "That's worse than hate." "Maybe, but it's honest." "What happens now?" "Now you figure out how to live with what you've done, and I figure out how to live without you." "Will you be happier without me?" I considered the question. "I think I'll be myself without you. Whether that makes me happier remains to be seen." Seren nodded and walked away. I watched her get into her car, a 10-year-old Honda that looked tired and worn, like everything else in her life these days, and drive off. I sat on the courthouse steps for a few minutes, thinking about the past month. 4 weeks ago, I'd been a married man with a savings account and a comfortable routine. Now I was single, living in a small apartment, and planning to buy a building with money I'd get from divorcing my wife. My phone buzzed with a text from Marty. "How'd it go?" "Probation and restitution. She has 6 months to pay back $73K or she goes to prison." "Ouch, you feel bad for her?" I thought about that. Did I feel bad for Seren? She was facing financial ruin, possible imprisonment, and the complete destruction of her relationship with her family. 6 months ago, the idea of her suffering would have been unbearable to me. "No," I texted back. "I don't feel bad for her." "Good. You ready to look at that building?" "On my way." The building next to Marty's gym was everything he'd promised. Solid construction, good location, plenty of space for expansion. The owner, a 70-year-old man named Frank Kowalski, walked us through each room, pointing out recent improvements and discussing his vision for the space. "I always hoped someone local would take it over," he said. "Someone who understands the neighborhood." "What made you decide to sell?" I asked. "My wife wants to move to Florida, says she's tired of shoveling snow." He grinned. "After 40 years of marriage, I've learned not to argue with her about the important stuff." We finished the tour in what would become my office, a small room overlooking the main gym floor. Through the window, I could see Marty working with a teenage girl on her footwork, calling out encouragement and corrections. "So," Frank said, "Marty tells me you're interested in making an offer." "I am." "Good. I like the idea of this place staying in the boxing family." We shook hands, and I wrote him a check for earnest money. Walking back to my apartment, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months, excitement about the future. That evening, I called Janet Morrison to check on the divorce proceedings. "Everything's moving smoothly," she said. "Your wife's attorney isn't contesting anything, which makes sense given her legal situation. We should have final papers within 2 weeks." "What about the asset division?" "You'll get half the house value, plus reimbursement for the misappropriated funds, probably around $42,000 total." "Perfect. Keaton, can I ask you something?" "Sure." "In 30 years of practice, I've seen a lot of people go through divorce. Most of them are angry, bitter, looking for revenge. You seem different." "Different how?" "Peaceful, like you've already moved on." I thought about that. I think I moved on the moment I stopped trying to fix something that was broken beyond repair. That's a healthy attitude. It's the only attitude that makes sense. I spent months trying to understand why Seren did what she did, trying to figure out how to save our marriage, trying to be enough for someone who'd already decided I wasn't enough. Once I stopped doing that, everything became clearer. And now? Now I'm building something new, something that's mine. After I hung up, I sat in my small apartment and looked around. It wasn't much. A couch, a TV, a kitchen table that doubled as a desk. But it was mine. Every piece of furniture, every decision about how to arrange the space, every choice about what to keep and what to throw away, all mine. For the first time in years, I wasn't trying to be what someone else wanted me to be. I wasn't managing someone else's expectations or walking on eggshells around someone else's moods. I was just being myself, and it turned out that was enough. My phone rang. Unknown number. Hello? Keaton, this is Derek Hall. I sat up straighter. Derek, calling from Miami. How did you... Never mind. Look, I wanted to talk to you about Seren. What about her? She's been calling me nonstop, leaving messages, sending texts, even had some private investigator contact me. She needs to stop. I'm not her keeper anymore, Derek. If you want her to stop contacting you, call the police. I don't want to get her in more trouble. I heard about the court case. Then what do you want from me? I want you to tell her to move on. They'll tell her the car thing is over, the money's gone, and bothering me isn't going to change anything. You could tell her that yourself. I tried. She won't listen. Derek, let me ask you something. Did you ever have any intention of paying back that money? He was quiet for a moment. Look, Keaton, Seren and I had a relationship. She wanted to help me out, and I let her. I never promised to pay her back. You let her destroy her marriage and her family to buy you a car. I didn't make her do anything. She made her own choices. You're right. She did make her own choices, just like you made yours. What's that supposed to mean? It means you're both getting exactly what you deserve. She's facing prison for fraud, and you're stuck living with the knowledge that you're the kind of person who takes advantage of someone's feelings to get what you want. I didn't take advantage. Derek, you convinced a married woman to steal money from her family to buy you a BMW. If that's not taking advantage, I don't know what is. She offered. She offered because you manipulated her into thinking you cared about her. I did care about her. No, you cared about what she could do for you. There's a difference. Derek was quiet for a long time. Then, just tell her to stop calling me, okay? I'll pass along the message, but Derek? Yeah? Don't call me again. I'm done cleaning up messes that you and Seren made together. I hung up and deleted his number from my phone. Then I deleted Seren's number too. Whatever happened to her from this point forward, it wasn't my problem anymore. The next morning, I signed the papers to buy Frank Kowalski's building. That afternoon, I had lunch with Marty to discuss our partnership agreement. That evening, I called my brother in Chicago to tell him about the divorce and the new business. So you're really doing this? He asked. Starting over at 35. I'm not starting over. I'm starting fresh. There's a difference. What's the difference? Starting over implies that I'm going back to some previous version of myself. Starting fresh means I'm becoming the person I was always supposed to be. And who's that? I'm still figuring that out. But I know it's not the guy who spent 8 years trying to be enough for someone who would never think I was enough. Sounds like you're in a good place. I am. For the first time in years, I'm exactly where I want to be. 2 weeks later, the divorce was finalized. I didn't attend the hearing. There was no point. Janet called me afterward to confirm that everything had gone through as expected. Congratulations, she said. You're officially single. How do you feel? I thought about that question as I walked through my new building, planning the layout for the expanded gym. How did I feel? Free, I said finally. I feel free. That night, I had dinner with Richard and Margaret Whitmore. They'd asked to meet, and I was curious about what they wanted to say. We owe you an apology, Richard said after we'd ordered. For what? For not seeing what Seren was doing to you, for not understanding how unhappy she'd become in your marriage. You don't owe me an apology. You didn't know because she didn't want you to know. Still, Margaret said, we feel responsible. We raised her to be better than this. You raised her to be independent and ambitious. Those aren't bad qualities. She just took them too far. What will you do if she goes to prison? Richard asked. Nothing. It won't be my problem anymore. That sounds cold. Maybe, but it's honest. I spent months trying to save someone who didn't want to be saved. I'm not doing that anymore. We talked for another hour about the business, about my plans for the future, about anything except Seren. When we parted ways, Richard shook my hand. You're a good man, Keaton. I hope you find someone who appreciates that. Thanks. But right now, I'm more interested in appreciating myself. 6 months later, I got a call from Janet Morrison. Thought you'd want to know, she said. Seren missed her restitution deadline. They're revoking her probation. When does she report to prison? Next week. How long? 18 months. I felt something that might have been sadness, but it passed quickly. Seren had made her choices, and now she was living with the consequences, just like I was living with mine. The difference was, my consequences included a thriving business, a renewed sense of purpose, and the kind of peace that comes from finally being honest about who you are and what you want. Thanks for letting me know, I told Janet. Any regrets? About the divorce? None. About how it all played out? I thought about that. Did I regret that Seren was going to prison? Did I regret that her relationship with her parents was destroyed? Did I regret that Derek had gotten away with everything while she paid the price? No, I said finally. I don't regret any of it. She made her choices, and I made mine. We both got exactly what we deserved. That evening, I stood in my gym watching Marty work with a new group of kids. The space was full of energy and purpose, exactly what I'd hoped it would become. This was what I'd built with the money from my divorce, with the wreckage of my marriage. It wasn't the life I'd planned, but it was the life I'd chosen. And for the first time in years, that was enough. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. This is Seren. I'm going to prison next week. I wanted to say I'm sorry for everything. I read the message twice, then deleted it without responding. There was nothing left to say. I put my phone away and walked onto the gym floor, where a teenage kid was struggling with his footwork. I spent the next hour teaching him the basics, watching him improve with each repetition. This was my life now, building something meaningful, helping people get stronger, being exactly who I was without apology or explanation. It was more than enough. It was everything.